And you know what? It would be a chance to share a lot of these stories and feelings and the uniqueness of our...
For nearly 50 years, Ron Howard seemed perfect, the all-American boy from Mayberry who grew into Hollywood royalty. But in a recent interview, he revealed the darkness hidden behind the smile, opening up about a devastating choice he made in 1991 that still haunts him, a family member he nearly lost to addiction while he was collecting awards, and a moment on set when his body finally gave out, with his confession about those missing months proving heartbreaking. Ronald William Howard was born on March 1, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma, into a home already shaped by performance. His father, Rance Howard, had adopted his stage name in 1948 before joining the Air Force, while his mother, Jean Spiegel, trained as an actress and married Rance in 1949. Even before Ron could talk, he was on camera, making his screen debut at just 18 months old in The Western Frontier Woman, filmed between late 1955 and early 1956, beginning a life where childhood and camera marks blurred together. As television production shifted west, the Howards left Oklahoma for California, not chasing glamour but proximity, placing Ron near producers and sets before he ever saw a school desk, working on Playhouse 90 before grade school. By the time his brother Clint was born in 1959, the family's plan was working, with earnings carefully managed by Rance alone, who took more than 140 film jobs and 177 TV appearances to stay close to Ron's world. Everything changed on October 3, 1960, when 6-year-old Ron appeared as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show, a role shaped by a real-life bond after Rance challenged the writers to make the father-son relationship honest, a challenge Andy Griffith embraced, creating the emotional core of the series. For 8 seasons, Ron grew up on television while living a modest life in Burbank, attending public schools, eating meatloaf and fish sticks, and following strict family rules that avoided typical child star chaos. Acting became work, not indulgence, and Clint quietly built his own career alongside him. Ron's performances stood out because he didn't try to be cute. He was trained to be truthful, a lesson drilled into him by Rance and praised by producer Sheldon Leonard. Fame came early, but childhood slipped away, captured most memorably in the 1963 episode Opie, the Birdman, where 9-year-old Ron delivered raw, controlled emotion with adult-level timing. Despite warmth on set, Ron later described those years as a golden cage, with schooling done beside sound stages and lunches spent with crew instead of classmates. The pressure intensified with The Music Man in 1962, where a tone-deaf, rhythm-challenged Ron struggled through the role of Winter Peru, relying on patient coaching and clever filming to succeed, even as he quietly panicked behind the scenes. What looked like play, memorizing others' lines, acting out scenes with dolls, hinted at a future director, a path reinforced by Rance's lessons in script analysis that would resurface years later when Ron began directing films like Grand Theft Auto at just 23. By 1966, Ron was already pushing himself into new territory, joining the Western series of Monroe's, filmed in the rugged Wyoming Rockies, where the work was rough, real, and far removed from the safety of a soundstage. Ron learned horseback riding simply by watching Ranch hands on set, but despite the effort and expense of filming on location, the Monroes lasted only 26 episodes before NBC canceled it in 1967, and at just 13 years old, Ron felt rejection for the first time, taking the failure personally even as the Andy Griffith Show continued its success, a sting that stayed with him. In 1968, he was offered an audition for the Brady Bunch pilot but turned it down, not out of disinterest, but because his parents insisted on balance, requiring that one of them be home daily between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. so Ron could grow up as normally as possible, something he wanted to as he craved school, space, and friends. Passing on that audition may have saved his career, because by 1974 he became Richie Cunningham on Happy Days, a role that carried him through his teen years and gave him the financial freedom to step behind the camera. In 1969, Ron's agent secured him residuals from the Andy Griffith Show reruns, about $50,000 a year, more than Sandy Koufax earned at his baseball peak, but the Howards lived modestly, investing in savings accounts and U.S. bonds rather than splurging. Ron's first hard lesson in risk came when he lost about $25,000 investing in a go-kart business with friends. On April 1st, 1968, the final episode of the Andy Griffith Show aired, and at 14, Ron felt the weight of an ending as the Mayberry sets were dismantled and his camera-shaped childhood closed behind him. By 1974, At just 19, he walked into Gary Marshall's office and instantly became Richie Cunningham, winning the role not by performing loudly but by feeling real, earning a 5-year deal at $7,500 per episode and beating out 35 other actors. By season 5 in 1977, playing a frozen-in-time teenager felt suffocating as a real-world grappled with Vietnam, prompting Ron to push for more serious themes. Efforts ABC resisted, leaving his frustration to simmer and fueling his desire for creative control. When ABC tried renaming the show Fonz's Happy Days during the height of Fonz's $50 million merchandise boom, Ron threatened to walk despite earning $15,000 per episode, forcing a compromise that preserved the show's identity. In October 1977, he finally directed his first episode, delivering Spielberg-level preparation on a tight $10,000 budget, boosting ratings by 12% and earning more directing opportunities. At the same time, he struck a deal with Roger Corman that led to Grand Theft Auto in 1977, a chaotic, permit-free film co-written with his father that cost $602,000 and made $15 million, cementing Ron's transition from actor to filmmaker. Amid all of this, Ron married his high school sweetheart Cheryl Alley in 1975, crediting her as a steady force behind everything he built. In 1982, he took another leap with Night Shift, a dark comedy set in a morgue starring Henry Winkler and introducing Michael Keaton, which turned an $8 million budget into $21 million at the box office, proving once again that Ron Howard was no longer just a red-headed kid from Mayberry. Ron encouraged improvisation on Night Shift, recording ideas into a tape recorder, dancing around with a Walkman, and shouting lines like, "Is this a great country or what?" Moments that initially worried test audiences in the MPAA for being too raunchy, but ultimately worked, earning Henry Winkler a Golden Globe nomination and launching Michael Keaton into stardom while proving Ron could make bold studio films that didn't play it safe. That confidence carried into Splash in 1984, where Ron directed Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah in a romantic fantasy about a man and a mermaid, Disney's first Touchstone release, made on a budget between $8 and $11 million and grossing $69.8 million. Hannah endured a 35-pound mermaid tail that took hours to attach and performed all her underwater scenes herself, stunning the crew with her swimming ability. Originally written with a sad ending, the film was changed after test audiences, especially women, rejected it, allowing love to win instead, a decision critics praised as the film earned a 91% Rotten Tomatoes score, an Oscar nomination, and turned Hanks into a star while confirming Ron as a box office force. In November 1985, Ron and Brian Grazer founded Imagine Entertainment, merging their companies and quickly securing deals with TriStar, Showtime, and the Movie Channel, later expanding into television and amassing over 43 Oscar nominations and 198 Emmys, while Imagine Films grossed more than $15 billion worldwide. In 1995, Ron raised the bar again with Apollo 13, directing the $52 million film with obsessive realism, buying real NASA equipment, filming 612 zero-gravity shots aboard the Vomit Comet, and reshooting a costly explosion scene multiple times until it felt authentic, a process so demanding that after 90 straight days of 18-hour workdays, Ron collapsed from dehydration and hypertension, briefly halting production. The film grossed $355 million worldwide, earned 9 Oscar nominations and 2 wins, and symbolically buried Opie Taylor forever. A misstep followed with EDTV in 1999, an $80 million project that underperformed after releasing alongside The Truman Show, costing Imagine $30 million, but Ron adapted and rebounded as Imagine expanded. Rapidly into the 2000s. In 2001, he directed A Beautiful Mind with a quiet, immersive approach that revealed John Nash's hallucinations without visual cues, allowing audiences to discover the truth alongside the character, a technique that paid off with 4 Oscars, including Best Director for Ron, and over $313 million in global box office despite criticism over historical omissions. By 2006, Ron faced logistical chaos directing The Da Vinci Code, recreating churches digitally after access was denied, filming nights at Lincoln Cathedral, fabricating Mona Lisa replicas, and navigating constant technical setbacks, all for a film that grossed $758 million worldwide. Amid professional success, personal loss followed when Ron's father, Ron Howard, the man who taught him how to listen, act, and lead, passed away in 2017 at age 89 after prolific careers spanning The Waltons, Seinfeld, Grey's Anatomy, and more. In 2008, Ron returned to Restrained Intensity with Frost R. Nixon, studying every breath and pause of archival footage to capture the psychological duel between David Frost and Richard Nixon, culminating in a performance that struck with quiet force and earned the Film 5 Academy Award nominations, reaffirming Ron Howard's evolution from child actor to one of Hollywood's most disciplined and enduring storytellers. Despite earning nominations for Best Picture and Best Director, the film brought in only $28.5 million, becoming one of the rare Best Picture nominees to lose money. Long before that, on June 7, 1975, Ron married his high school sweetheart, Nancy Morgan, when they were both just 21, setting a rule that would last for 5 decades: no work talk at dinner. Nancy had acted too, even appearing on Happy Days, and while she understood the business, she protected their home as they raised 4 children: Bryce Dallas, twins Jocelyn and Paige, and Reed, while Ron balanced sets and studios. When Bryce was born in March 1981, Ron made a choice he later regretted by directing her school play at age 5, unintentionally nudging her toward acting before she chose it herself. Years later, he apologized. She forgave him, and she went on to study at NYU's Tisch School, launching her career with The Village in 2004 and eventually earning $8 million per Jurassic World film. Ron stepped back and didn't push his other children, having learned the lesson the hard way. But not all lessons came easily. During the 1980s, his brother Clint struggled with cocaine and alcohol addiction, and by 1990 had hit rock bottom, forcing Ron to give him an ultimatum: rehab or lose a relationship. Clint chose life, and in their 2021 memoir, The Boys, Ron admitted the guilt he carried, knowing his own rise had left Clint feeling behind. In 1991, Jocelyn was born, and just a year later Ron left for 6 months to film Far and Away in Ireland, the longest separation he had ever had from Nancy and his children. When he returned, Jocelyn had changed. Bryce barely remembered him, and Nancy had carried the weight alone, a moment that shook him deeply and led to a promise to avoid long international shoots, a promise he mostly kept, though he broke it in 2005 for Cinderella Man, missing more of Bryce's life. In 2025, during their 50th wedding anniversary, Ron donated a bench to John Burroughs High School where they first met and quietly confessed that he still regretted how much he had missed, while Nancy acknowledged the cost, even as their no-work dinner rule still stood. In 2020, Ron directed Hillbilly Elegy after Netflix paid $45 million for the film. It was widely criticized, earning him a Razzie nomination for Worst Director, though Glenn Close still received Oscar, SAG, and Golden Globe nods. That same year, he released Rebuilding Paradise, a documentary about the 2018 Camp Fire that killed 85 people and destroyed 14,000 homes. Paradise had been home to his mother-in-law, and Ron later called it the hardest project he had ever made, filming for over a year without looking away. In 2025, he took another creative risk with Eden, a survival thriller set in the 1930s Galapagos Islands, a story he first outlined on his BlackBerry 15 years earlier while on vacation. Despite a $55 million budget and a cast including Sydney Sweeney, Jude Law, Ana de Armas, Vanessa Kirby, and Daniel Bruhl, the film opened in 664 theaters and made just $1 million, leaving Ron anxious and close to quitting. He had nearly walked away before. Solo, a Star Wars story in 2018, collapsed after he took over mid-shoot and reshot 70% of the film, only for it to bomb. And in 2025, he admitted publicly that Solo almost ended his directing career, until Bryce pulled him back. He returned with projects for Apple TV+, kept going, and by 2025 had been married for 50 years, co-running Imagine Entertainment with Brian Grazer for 4 decades, producing more than 50 films, earning 47 Oscar nominations and 289 Emmy nods, and building a net worth exceeding $200 million. He credits his father for teaching him humility, mentors young directors, and continues telling stories, still remembering the bench at Burroughs High, the empty seat at dinner, and the baby who barely recognized him, remembering it all.